Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gov't. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group, located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, my friends, we've got a lot of Trump Warrant Affidavit business to attend to. You can see we're going to jump right into the mind map and see what is on the docket today. First and foremost, the big news out of the day was that the judge in the Donald Trump search warrant case, the FBI invasion of Mar-a-lago, well, there was a hearing today, oral arguments that took place, and there was a representative from the government there. His name was Jay Brat, and there was some other representatives from the media there. And we've got just a lot to unpack on this story. So we've got unsealing. We're going to actually take a look at the hearing. It was short, just about over an hour. So we'll unpack that. We've got the actual unsealed application. Now, so there was actually sort of an unsealing kind of that took place. Nothing really consequential, but it was an unsealing. And so we'll take a look at that. So the order that came out from the judge says unseal this docket entry. And so we'll go take a look at that docket entry. And it's basically just the request by the prosecutor to seal everything in the first place. So we'll look at that. Bruce Reinhart was the judge. He, of course, was leading the proceedings. So we'll check in with him. And then you may have heard of this guy. His name is Patrick Byrne, and he is the former CEO of Overstock.com, very prominent website. And he filed a declaration, and I was reading through it today, and I thought, this is a wild declaration. And so I wanted to share it with you because him, along with a bunch of other people, are filing affidavits and declarations and appeals, and there's just a lot going on. So we will see what Mr. Byrne had to file and what he said. And then, of course, today was really kind of a punt. So if you're just swinging by here, you know, the real big juicy stuff might come out after August 25th. That's the deadline that the government got. So we're going to start there, a full segment on the unsealing saga, the debate that will continue on. Then we have another segment coming up with our friend Bill Clinton. Yeah, there he is. Oh, gosh. So, all right. So Bill Clinton. Now, there's this case. Several of you have sent this to me. And actually, one of you, and I apologize, I forget who it was. You sent this case over, I think, on Monday or Tuesday. And on Monday or Tuesday, we were so sort of caught up. I think when was this? I don't remember when you sent it. And the whole point is, one of you sent it. I'm grateful for it. But when I was looking up at it, I'll get ready for the slow mode if we need it. When we were going through this originally, you sort of sent it over and I couldn't really piece together what was happening because it was happening on the fly. But several other people sent over this case. It's the Judicial Watch versus the National Archives case out of the D.C. Circuit Court, a 2012 case. And it's very interesting because you can see here just a quick snippet. It says, President Clinton retained certain things in his personal possession when he left office. You see that right there? That's the snippet. And he's unable to produce them now. He doesn't have them. And we go, well, that's interesting because Trump had stuff in his personal possession and he is able to produce them now. And so this is even like kind of worse than what Trump did, right? He had personal stuff and, well, we'll see. We'll see because he's been charged under the Presidential Records Act, or allegedly could be charged under this act. And so we can see how this was treated when Clinton was somebody where this was applicable. So we'll go through that. And there's a little bit to unpack there, possible charges under the Presidential Records Act. And then, yeah, the judge on the Clinton case, she went to Harvard. So very, very, very sophisticated legal analysis will be happening here today because of the Harvard opinion. And then in our last segment, this was actually just outstanding. So yesterday on the live stream, you may have missed it. I sort of missed it. But Donald Trump posted a couple things on Truth Social. And I read it twice, and I really couldn't piece together what the heck I was reading because it was so sort of out of the ordinary. He was almost endorsing Jerry Nadler. Remember that yesterday? I had to read it twice. Somebody said, Rob, go back and read that. And I had to read it again, and I was still confused because he was endorsing all of these people that were seemingly Democrats. And I thought, what the heck is going on here? And so it turns out he was endorsing a bunch of Democrats. And as funny as that is, the Democrats who he endorsed were all sort of flipping out about this last night all over Twitter. And it was just a lot of fun. So I was able to piece this back together. Donald Trump endorsed several of these New York candidates. You can see we're going to go through them in detail. Then you can see we've got Jerry Nadler with somebody else who's also sort of endorsing, Rep. Maloney. He issues out a couple tweets, and look, they all went just crazy all over Twitter. They're all responding. They're saying, no, I reject your endorsement, Trump. And then the other guys are saying, look, Trump endorsed my opponents. He likes our opponents. If you like Trump, well, then you might as well vote for my opponent out there. And so it just kind of turned this whole primary into just a catastrophe. And it's just hilarious. And really, we haven't heard from waddling Jerry Nadler yet. You know, we don't know if he's going to be responding to this. A lot of the other Democrats in the primaries certainly have responded, but we haven't heard from Jerry Nadler yet. So we're going to go through just a ton of stuff. And if you want to be a part of the show, the place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And we have an amazing community chatting away over there. And so I'll invite you to come and join us over there. Let's see who's over there right now. Oh, yeah, we've got a locals chat. It says, wouldn't it be great if news about Biden, Clinton, Obama kept dripping out until the end of the year? Then the new Congress removes the current administration, reinstates Donald Trump on 1/21/23 to serve the remaining 2 years, and then he's reelected in 2024 for more years. So yeah, it's from AAA Patriot. It would be great, right? It'd save us a lot of hardship here in America, but I don't think that that's probably going to be happening there, AAA Patriot. But it is a nice thought, isn't it? Because of well, you know, I guess crazier things could happen. We'll have to see. So shout out to our Rumble friends. Don't forget to join up over on YouTube. Click that join button and you get our morning walk and talks. No matter what sort of way you want to support the show, we have morning walk and talks that we do where we carry on the conversation before and after the show. And of course, I am a lawyer. And so my day job, right, is running a law firm in Scottsdale, Arizona. And we offer free case evaluations for good people charged with crimes. We maintain the presumption of innocence, require the government to meet their burden of proof. We love helping good people. 480-787-0394. If you happen to know anybody in the state of Arizona, we would really love the opportunity to help. We're extremely passionate about the work that we do. We appreciate you referring people over to us and our direction. And now it's time to get into the business for the day. The Donald Trump judge had a hearing about the affidavit that accompanied the warrant that authorized the search of Trump's private home in Mar-a-Lago, Florida. And it was a little bit of an interesting hearing. The judge did unseal something, and we're going to take a look at what that is. But we've got a little bit to unpack here. I want to start by taking a look at the length of the hearing, sort of expecting a little bit more here. But if you actually go over to the court docket, here's what they tell us. And you can see this entry came in on August 18th. Here it is. It says we've got a minute entry for proceedings right here at the bottom, held before Judge Bruce Reinhart, right? That's the judge that we've been following along here. It's a miscellaneous hearing as to the sealed search warrant held on 8/18. That's today. Now look, total time in court, 1 hour, 17 minutes. Court reporter, shout out to Pauline. We love our court reporters here. And she's the person who sort of transcribed the minute entries. So not that long, right? I mean, really not that long at all. You've been here. We've read through hours of transcripts. I mean, thousands of pages at this point in time. And so they're there for an hour, 17 minutes. Not much goes on. Now we're going to go over to Politico. They had two reporters there, so we'll read the article from them and see what actually went down. But I want to just show you what the outcome was, right? Let's fast forward right to the outcome so we can sort of tease out what this means. But the second entry here on top, it says the following. Ordered that by noon Eastern on Thursday, August 25th, the government shall file under seal its proposed redactions along with a legal memo setting forth the justification for the proposed redactions. Right. So I'm going to read the actual order here in a minute, but I wanted to show you this. I highlighted it. Docket entry number 57 shall be unsealed by the clerk of the court. Right. So we'll take a look at that. So there is a little bit of an unsealing taking place. And then Judge Reinhart says, see the attached document for the full details. So we'll take a look at that. But we've got sort of two things to parse through. This is docket entry. Well, actually, let's just go over right to the docket itself. So I have the docket linked here. And if we scroll over there, we're going to see the order that looks like this. Filed on 8/18, it is filed by JMD out of the D.C. court, stamped on August 18th. United States District Court out of the Southern District of Florida, 1 page, right? Not much. And you can see it is signed here by the judge, by Bruce Reinhart. Done and ordered, Chambers, West Palm Beach, Florida, 18th day of August. Here's what it says. This cause is before the court on motions to unseal the search warrant materials, including the probable cause affidavit, because we've already seen a bunch of other stuff. We really want to see the meat and potatoes. These were all filed by the media intervenors. And if you remember on the actual court docket, okay, we listed a whole slew of these media intervenors. And basically a lot of these people were there at that moment in time. So for example, we had yesterday, right? This was the response by all of these media companies. Look at all of them. You've got Times is here, American Broadcasting, ABC, right? You know the list of them. Basically everybody. Because the media thrives on Trump. So they're all skidding in there and they're saying, you've got to unseal this puppy. So here, he says, look, today, this is Judge Reinhart speaking. He says, today I held a hearing on the motions. As I ruled from the bench at the conclusion of the hearing, I find that on the present record, the government has not met its burden of showing that the entire affidavit should remain sealed. I'll read it and we'll unpack it. It says, it is ordered that by noon Eastern time on Thursday, August 25th, so that's next week, the government shall file under seal its proposed redactions, along with a legal memorandum setting forth the justification for the proposed redactions. Further ordered that ECF number 57 shall be unsealed, right? So this is the new thing that was unsealed. They went back, they said, okay, 57 sealed, unsealed, just flip that box, and then we'll take a look at that document. Now, a couple interesting things here, right? A lot of people are saying that this means that he is going to unseal it. Now, I don't read it that way personally, right? There's a lot of headlines flying out there today saying that he was specifically making the ruling that the affidavit is going to be unsealed. I'm not sure I see that. What I see is he says, I find that on the present record that, yeah, I can unseal this thing, right? I'm leaning towards unsealing it. But currently, it's not met its burden. So, you know, in other words, it's sort of like if I'm a prosecutor, if I'm reading this as a government prosecutor, I'm like, oh, okay, well, the present record, they haven't met our burden. So how can we supplement the record? You know, how can we actually add some additional facts here that will make this thing more palatable for the judge? The judge is seemingly going to be authorizing this to be released. And they say, well, the present record's not good enough, but how about if I layer a bunch of other crap on top of it? So if they do that, maybe the judge changes his mind. But if not, right, if there's not anything additional, then it's ordered that they shall file under seal its proposed redactions along with a legal memo setting forth the justification for the proposed redactions. So then you say, oh, great. So then on the 25th, they're gonna file their response for the proposed redactions. They're going to say, you know, they're going to send all of that in. We want everything redacted. They're going to just take a big, disgusting Sharpie and just take all the black pages all over the place. And then what's going to happen is that, you know, the media is going to respond, and then they're going to go through this line by line, right? It's going to be a big litany of responses. And the question will be, you know, what's the judge going to do with this? Is he going to, you know, debate this out for another 4 or 5 months? Are we going to get, you know, redactions within 30 days? Well, it's probably going to take a while. And we played a lot with this in the Ghislaine Maxwell case. And it took a long time, man. We were getting documents 3 months late after the redactions were finally approved. We were looking at documents, you know, 2-3 months after they were submitted, and the proposed redaction sequence went on. Because in that case, right, it's prosecutor, defense, judge makes a ruling, and then finally we get to some conclusions on that. But, you know, this is it. This is what came out of the ruling out of the court today. And what that means is there's going to be a lot more to have conversations about the ultimate redactions. Now, as I mentioned, the judge did tell us that entry number 57, as we see here, further ordered that DE docket entry number 57 shall also be unsealed. And so many people are saying, wow, well, what is entry 57? We better go take a look at that one because we want to see some unsealed documents. And that came out today, but docket entry 57, as you can see, this one came out back on August 15th, right? And so this was this is when they filed it. This is the U.S. government filing. It is a second notice of filing of redacted documents. So the court said, you can unseal this. All right. And there is actually some stuff to read through here. So let's take a look at this. This was that entry that was filed on August 15th, and it is 5 pages long, and it comes out of the same court, of course. And this was the entry that was filed under seal. This is being filed by the U.S. government prosecutors, and it's about Trump, right? It's all about the search warrant. We see the second notice of filing of the redacted documents is now here. The United States, this is government prosecutors, is notifying the court that we're filing the following documents, which is a redacted version of material previously filed in this case under seal. So the criminal cover sheet for the August 5th warrant, right? We're going to look at that again. The cover sheet of August 5th warrant application, so that's page 4, docket entry page 4. The government's motion to seal the warrant, which was docket entry 2, and then docket entry number 3. Oh, okay. So you can see we're sort of doing a loop-de-loop. We're going around and around we go. When we go back over here, the number 57 was about really sort of referencing docket entries 2 and 3, which were all the way down here, which were accompanying the warrant, right? That was accompanying the warrant and the motion to seal the warrants. And so we actually don't even have entries 2 and 3. It's basically these 2 entries, 2 and 3, or somewhere in here. They're sort of skipping it over them in the numbering there. But it is that's what they're referencing. It's referencing those 2 documents. So we see those, right? These actual orders are now here. This criminal cover sheet has now been unsealed, and it may have been I have not seen it before. It's the first time I'm seeing it. So I'm not sure if you've seen it before, but it's the first time I've seen it because it came out today. Criminal cover sheet says, 1, did this matter originate from a matter coming out of northern region of U.S.? No. Probably looking for conflicts or retiring judges or a scheduling issue. Did this matter originate from a matter out of the central region? Answered no. 1, attorney attests to that, so nothing really there. But this is the application for the search warrant, right? And this one is stamped here with a big red stamp filed by TM out of the D.C. Entry court, or stamped on by somebody receiving it from the clerk, right? When you file a court document, you typically get what's called a courtesy copy back. So we stamp it, they stamp it, and we stamp ours. So we have a copy that we say, we gave this to you when you stamped it, right? So we filed it, you filed it. And even when we mail in motions, we'll typically mail a motion that they can stamp and mail back to us, right? So we have a copy of that. So that's what's happening here. Now, we've already talked about some of this, but let's just take a quick look at it again. In the matter of the search, describe the area, right? It is the Palm Beach residence at Mar-a-Lago. Application for a warrant by telephone or other electronic means. I, a federal law enforcement officer, request a search warrant and state under penalty of perjury that I believe that on the following person or property, see attachment A. And that is going to be the description of the property to be searched and its location. Located in Southern District of Florida, we believe that there is concealed, see attachment B. So we've got 2 big attachments that are very important here. Why? What's the basis for the search? Oh, there it is. Evidence of a crime, right? Contraband, fruits of crime, or other illegally possessed materials. That's the evidence of Trump, being a criminal. And we've talked previously about these 3 different broad categories. And, as I said, you could, a lot of this is very academic, right? We could pull open those statutes. We could take a look at each different, violation, take a look at the elements and see what's there. But, it's basically academic at this point until you know a little bit more about what they want and what the investigation is involving. Here we see, they also see the attached affidavit of FBI Special Agent so-and-so. Who is this person? We don't know. Continued on the attached sheet, signed by Special Agent so-and-so. It has a little bit of a flamboyant signature there. Attested to in accordance with the federal rules of criminal procedure. They called in by a WhatsApp. They called in on a WhatsApp, right? Sort of just dialed in through the application. Signed off on, so the judge is just listening on his WhatsApp, right? Sending emojis back and forth. Says, okay, yeah, that sounds great. I listened to your affidavit, and I've decided that this is just perfect. I'd love to grant a warrant for you to go raid the former president's home. I don't like him anyways. Sounds perfect. Bruce Reinhart signs off on the warrant, and there it is. Now, accompanying the warrant was this request, which is the motion to seal it so that nobody can see what's happening, right? It's not public record yet. Same thing happened here. Filed August 5th. accompanying the warrant, the FBI special agent is going to say, yeah, I'm going to attest to all of this. But the prosecutors are going to want to communicate to the judge that all of this has to be kept under seal. How do they do that? Through this document. They file the motion to seal. And so the government prosecutors, they tell us, they say, the United States of America, by and through the undersigned assistant, United States attorney, hereby moves to seal this motion, the search warrant, and all its accompanying documents until further order of this court. Right? And this, of course, is what we're trying to undo, to unring this bell. The United States submits that there is good cause because the integrity of the ongoing investigation might be compromised and evidence might be destroyed. Now, you can understand that before a search warrant is executed, right? Before it's executed. Say, we need to go get these illegal drugs in that person's house. If they know we're coming, they're going to flush it all down the toilet. So you don't want them to know about it. But after the warrant's been executed and you've seized those drugs, there's really no risk of them going down the toilet anymore, right? Sort of is what we're arguing. We want to see all of this uncovered. So the United States further requests that, pursuant to this court's procedures, for highly sensitive documents, all documents associated with this investigation not be filed on the court's electronic document, because filing these materials on the electronic document poses a risk to safety given the sensitive nature of the material contained therein. So they don't want the affidavit unsealed. They don't even want this in the computer system, it sounds like. They don't even want it on the federal dockets, where you file everything, right? That's where we go and we cover all of our cases there. All the Sussman stuff was on there. We saw all of Ghislaine Maxwell stuff on there, right? All of this stuff, sealed, unsealed, and so on. They don't want it even on the docket, signed off on by a redacted attorney who signed off on the name here. Okay, Juan Antonio Gonzalez is just a United States attorney. He's probably for the District of Florida. But who is the actual U.S. attorney who signed off on it? I don't know. I don't know who it is. And that's a little bit strange why they'd redact that. I mean, you work there. Curious. Now, here's the sealing order. Okay, so as the prosecutor signs it, the judge signs off on the warrant. He's just signing documents. Yeah, Trump got it. Yep, next. What else you got? Anything else? Sealing order. The United States of America, having applied to this court, Bruce Reinhart, for an order sealing the motion to seal. So we're filing a motion to seal, and I'd like an order to seal the motion to seal, right? So that you can't even see that I'm requesting this to be sealed. That's like, right? It's like inception of sealing. This order shall be filed. It says here, it is hereby ordered, now that the court has found good cause, that not only the sealing of the seal will be allowed, but the search warrant and all of its accompanying documents. And this order, court finds good cause, the motion to seal the search warrant and its accompanying documents, and this order shall be filed under seal until further notice. However, they say the United States Attorney's Office and the FBI may obtain copies of any sealed document for purposes of executing the search warrant, right? So the FBI sort of has free reign to come and go. Same with the DOJ. You need to see this stuff, no problem. Just flash your badge and we're good. So that's what we get out of this, right? And that's what was unsealed. Now, all this stuff was filed back on August 5th. And so we don't get a whole lot, more of this. It's just sort of the process that they went through. Now, we do find it interesting that, they are still sort of concerned about this was filed originally, but they're still concerned about the destruction of evidence, about the sensitive nature of the material made within. I mean, that's the argument that they were making in court today. And so there were no documents that were available to be sort of seen there were no audio recordings or video recordings that were allowed to be broadcast. But we did hear from Politico, they had two reporters who were there. They were actually in the media room. And here's what they tell us happened. They say Donald Trump entered Thursday demanding answers about the FBI search of his private residence. Former president got few new details about the probe. Got a piece of unwelcome news to boot, says the feds are just getting started. That's the message that came out from Justice Department prosecutors during an hour-long court hearing on Thursday over whether to publicly release the contents of the affidavit. Trump has, they say, ricocheted from one legal crisis to another. At Thursday's proceedings, the Justice Department's top counterintelligence official Jay Bratt repeatedly emphasized that the investigation into the former president's handling of the classified White House records is, quote, in its early stages. Which, of course, we've all prognosticated for some time. There is no off-ramp for them. Where else can they go but to continue with this prosecution? Sort of once you're in, baby, you got to go all in. If you're going to come at the king, if you're going to swing, you best not miss. Right? They're all in at this point. So they say it's in its early stages. Magistrate Judge Bruce Reinhart, who authorized the search on August 5th, ordered prosecutors to propose redactions to the affidavit by next week. Now, they're indicating here that he's skeptical of their arguments to keep those documents under seal, and I'm not so sure about that, right? Yeah, he may release something, but even if it is released, I'm going to guess it's going to be sort of this big, redacted, blanked out sheet of paper. We've seen a lot of those here. They're quite annoying. He set a deadline of next Thursday for the prosecutors to propose the redactions to the affidavit. And he says, I'm not prepared to find the affidavit should be fully sealed, right? So that's what I was waiting for. Now, in his order, it didn't seem unequivocal. He was kind of kicking the can down the road a little bit. I find at present that the government has not met their burden. And so apparently somebody listening in court said that he said this as well. I'm not prepared to find the affidavit should be fully sealed. So he's sort of still open. But Reinhart also signaled he would likely announce significant redactions and a final resolution on the issues of public access may still be a long way off. They're going to go slowly. They're going to slow roll the whole thing. This is going to be considered careful process where everyone's rights are going to be protected, he said. That's Judge Reinhart. Trump World, of course, according to this article, they say that these proceedings were treated as a mixed bag. His team demanded the full release of the affidavit, but they, of course, did not get that. Now, there were some other interesting filings here that took place, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with this gentleman, but he is the former Overstock CEO of Overstock.com. His name is Patrick Byrne. And as I mentioned in the court dockets, there's been all sorts of interesting filings. So, in addition to the media, there's a whole litany of media people, ABC and so on, all filing to be a part of this thing. We also have some interesting individuals who are filing documents. We talked previously about this individual. His name is Michael Barth. And today he filed something very interesting. He's asking for a district judge, so somebody who is actually sort of at a different level than the magistrate judge, which is Judge Reinhart, to review what he has done, right? He's saying, I'd like to speak to your manager motion that just came out. And I don't mean that in a condescending way. I filed many of these. And it's to notice for a change of judge is to go to the presiding judge, right? You go to the presiding when you got a problem with a lower level judge. He's saying, can somebody else take a look at this? He's also asking for the judge recusal and to file, and he says he's responding to the government's omnibus response to the motion. Okay, so he's filing something on his own. And my point of detailing this is that like everybody's sort of skidding in here and getting involved. Today, there was another very interesting motion by this guy. So he filed two documents. On August 18th, he filed these two things. One, a motion to intervene and a memo of law filed by Patrick Byrne, and a sworn declaration by Patrick Byrne. And now Patrick Byrne, right, if you don't know who this guy is, he's the CEO of Overstock.com, led two smaller companies. He, wrote a book at some point in time. He resigned as CEO in August 2019, following revelations that he, according to Wikipedia, was involved with the Russians, which everybody is. Byrne then emerged as a leading figure, they say, in promoting conspiracy theories, which means he's probably one of the most accurate people out there. I mean, because everybody who was a conspiracy theorist like 18 months ago is like dead on accurate about everything. So so what this means is he's probably a genius, including the deep state conspiracy. Oh yeah, 100%. He's brilliant. Okay. It says in 2021, he repeatedly promoted claims about the election, toured United States to promote some vaccination issues, became notable for distributing and selling what they call misinformation. So, probably, brilliant pieces of information, truthful information is what I would guess. He's also been noted for his conservative views on public education, right? And the CEO of Overstock, you got to imagine this guy's sort of kind of a heavy hitter with a lot of capital. And we've been seeing some interesting movements on a lot of this. We talked a lot about Peter Thiel and J.D. Vance and Blake Masters here in Arizona. We've talked about Elon Musk was apparently hanging out in Wyoming with Kevin McCarthy in the days leading up to the primary and the elimination of Liz Cheney. And you've got the CEO of Overstock now, who's also sort of filing motions on his own. And let's take a look at one of these motions. It's actually quite interesting here. Now, I'm not going to be able to read all of it because of our YouTube censor. He's back there. I don't know what he has today, like a mace or a katana or something. But this is 7 pages. And it says that this is Patrick Byrne's consolidated motion to intervene. It is for the limited purpose of providing access and getting access to the search warrant, right? So he wants to see this stuff. He wants to see the search warrant just like everybody else does. Comes now pro se Patrick Byrne. He says, Judge, look, I need access to these records. Here's why. On August 8th, FBI agents went and raided Trump's presidential residence. The search was apparently for the Presidential Records Act. And according to the docket, all entries, including the affidavit in support, are sealed. Now, Patrick Byrne, I contend that these records should be unsealed to promote transparency. Now, this is going to get interesting. Like, we're going to hear some very interesting stuff in here. Relevant facts within Patrick Byrne's personal knowledge. The facts stated herein are based upon my personal knowledge. My personal knowledge, right? I was there. I saw this stuff. The dialogue quoted here was documented 30 to 40 days after it was spoken in my book. So go check that book out if you want to read it. A book was written in January and February. On the evening of Friday, December 18, 2020, remember this? Attorney Sidney Powell, and General Flynn and another attorney named Emily Newman, who worked for Ms. Powell, and I were sitting in the Oval Office with President Donald Trump with the door closed. What? So Patrick Byrne is sitting there with Sidney Powell, Flynn, and Emily Newman in the Oval Office with Trump, December 18, 2020. He says also in the meeting, White House General Counsel Pat Cipollone, who we heard about in the J6 hearings, and attorney Patrick Philbin, and attorney Eric Hirschman, who I think is the creepy panda lawyer. In this meeting, the topic of discussion revolved around how to respond to the situation where the FBI and the DHS had themselves reported foreign interference being attempted back in the election. Foreign interference in our election was something that was, discussed in the Oval Office, and they discussed multiple solutions to this. Flynn responded, and they had a big debate over all of this stuff. Now, at some point, Pat Cipollone apparently, remember Pat Cipollone was called to testify in the front of the January 6th committee. He says, Pat, a few minutes ago, you said that I can make anything happen by just saying it. Well, as I've decided, I could just appoint, let's say, for example, Sidney Powell as the White House counsel. I could just snap my fingers and make her special counsel. Can I do that? And somebody said to him, another White House lawyer says, no, it'll take months and Sidney Powell will never get it. She's got to get clearance, right? Like it'll take forever and she'll never be able to get it. Flynn responded to this saying, hey, Mr. President, you can do that right here on the spot. You can just say Sidney Powell is now special counsel, snap my fingers, and it's done. And after he does that, Mr. President, says Michael Flynn, you can also give her clearance right now. You can grant any clearance you want on the spot verbally. And they had a conversation about that. So here, what Trump said, according to Byrne, who apparently was in the room, says immediately thereafter, Donald Trump stated to his White House lawyers, I grant Sidney Powell a top secret security clearance. White House counsel got angry, but they didn't dispute Trump's actions. And they left the room. And he says, ladies and gentlemen, I witnessed a former national security advisor advise the president of his power to verbally grant any level security clearance to a person on the spot. Okay, that's the point of this whole thing. The president was instructed by professionals in his government, you have the power to do it, just do it. On December 18, I witnessed Trump verbally appoint her to the position of special counsel. And he had another meeting with Rudy Giuliani later on. But he says, all of this boils down to a raid on the president's residence for a violation of Residence and Presidential Records Acts. It says President Trump verbally declassified all the records in question that were targeted in the raid. And President Trump's lawyers advised him that he can speak into existence the powers of the president, which would then be evidenced by a subsequent document, commission, etc. Right? So he's been sort of, counseled that this is how it works. This is what you do, and you just do it. And we make the rest of it happen, which is sort of how it feels like it should be, right? Remember that the presidency is the top layer of everything, or it's supposed to be. If Trump has to go fill out a form, if he's like, can I declassify this, please? Again, get out of here, Mr. President. We're busy. All right, here, fill out the form. Here, you fill it out, and you get the form. It's like at a doctor's office, 37 pages. Fill out your name and phone number on every page. Then he's not really in charge, is he? Evidence that the president has the power to verbally appoint special counsel has been lawfully upheld and exercised in my presence. And he writes up, sends all of this in, says, this is my statement, this is my declaration, and this is what I say happened. And so now you should take that into consideration, Judge, and unseal the search warrant, unseal the affidavit, and give Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt as you continue to unpack this request by the media and others to see what is ultimately happening here. Now, as we can see, there is more to come on this, but it's not going to happen until August 25th. And that's the time at which the U.S. government is going to have to respond to the court order saying, what is your list of redactions, and give justification for every one of those. And so on prior shows here, we've talked a lot about what these look like. These search warrant affidavits are 5 pages to 10 pages, 15 pages sometimes. And they're typically, sometimes they can be photographs. Sometimes they are blocks of text, and they're going to have to go through each one of those one by one and justify the redactions for each one of them. So, we'll have to see what that looks like. There will very likely be redactions on the motion and the memo for redactions. So we may not even get to see what those requested redactions are. But regardless, we will, of course, continue to follow, and I hope you join us on that. If you're not already subscribed, we have been covering this in detail, and we will continue to do so. So thank you for liking this and continuing to follow the Trump warrant saga. Now, one very interesting angle to this whole thing, one of Trump's probably best defenses that I've seen thus far, at least as it pertains to the Presidential Records Act, involves Bill Clinton. And actually, Judicial Watch, which sued the National Archives for Clinton records, and they were rebuked. So we're going to go through this story here. And I'm waiting on a very important doorbell ring, and if that happens in the middle of this segment, I have to get up and just get it. And I'll share with you what it's all about if it gets here. We'll see. But it's Bill Clinton time, and he may be the person, well, we'll have to see. Bill Clinton and his sock drawer, really his presidential records, may be one prong of Trump's defense. Former President Bill Clinton and what happened out of the D.C. Circuit Court some time ago may be enough to show Trump an off-ramp, an exit path, if he does get prosecuted under the Presidential Records Act. The Clinton sock drawer, this story comes from a case that was filed by Judicial Watch against NARA, the National Archives. And this is all about Clinton's actual presidential records. We are going to take a look at this document. Judicial Watch filed a lawsuit, as you can see, against the National Archives and the Records Administration. You can see that there. A civil action from some time ago, and it involves the presidential records. Here, Judicial Watch sues the Clintons, and at the time this was NARA, the National Archives, under the APA, the Administrative Procedures Act, to declare that audio tapes that Bill Clinton and the historian Taylor Branch created fall under the Presidential Records Act, right? They say this is within that hula hoop. Just like they're saying Trump's boxes were. They tell us. They say that they are asking the court to assume custody or control over them and deposit them in the Clinton Presidential Library. Judicial Watch says that the defendant acted arbitrarily and capriciously, didn't exercise control over those audio tapes by not making them available. Now, same, very, very similar situation, right? Presidential Records Act, you've already seen this statute and this come up. You've got Bill Clinton, who is an actual president. A lot of people say, well, what about this and what about that? And Rob, you can't do this whataboutism stuff. Hillary Clinton is not the president, or Loretta Lynch or Lois Lerner or any of these people, right? Were not a part of the presidency, and so they should be precluded from the conversation. But this is the same level of office at this point. So the defendant, the National Archives, has moved to dismiss this, saying that there's no basis for the lawsuit. So what this is going to tell us is this is a ruling that came out of the court, right? Judicial wants the records, wants those audio tapes. NARA says you don't get them. So now the question is, what is the judge going to rule on? This is the memo. This is the opinion from the court. The court is saying, Judicial Watch, your motion to dismiss, the motion to dismiss against you is granted, right? You lose. You don't get access to those records. Why? Because you can't, this is not a redressable claim. The National Archives does not have the authority to designate materials as presidential records. So they can't say that something falls within their jurisdiction. The National Archives doesn't get to say anything about that. NARA does not even have the tapes in question, and NARA, as this judge says, lacks any right, duty, or means to seize control of them. Well, wait a minute. I thought that NARA was just communicating with the DOJ in order to go and actually obtain these records. Wasn't it the National Archives that wanted the subpoenas and all this stuff? So the judge says, but they have no duty, they have no right, they have no means to seize control of them. In other words, says the judge, there has been no showing that a remedy would be available to redress plaintiff's alleged injury, even if the court agreed with the characterization of the materials. Since the plaintiff can't ask the court to do anything, the case must be dismissed, right? So I guess if there was, like, let's say, for example, Trump was in charge at that time, one remedy would have been to just go send in a SWAT team of FBI agents to go seize it all. But that didn't come up here. Why? Because that's insane. Until August 8th. Background, factual background, they say, according to the plaintiff, to Judicial Watch, Bill enlisted Taylor Branch to assist him in, quote, creating an oral history of his 8 years in office. Oh, great. Bill Clinton's oral history. Great. In 2009, Taylor published a book entitled The Clinton Tapes, Wrestling History with the President, based upon extensive conversations with President Clinton during his tenure at the White House and the events that Branch observed when he was in the president's office. In 2010, Judicial Watch sued. They say that from 1993 to 2001, Branch recorded 79 audio tapes and preserved not only President Clinton's thoughts and commentary on contemporaneous events and issues he was facing as president, but in some instances recorded actual events like presidential telephone conversations in 79 audio tapes for a long period of time. Wow. It sounds like some of that might be official business, huh? Based on Branch's book, Judicial Watch says the recordings captured a verbatim record of President Clinton being president, performing his duties by engaging in conversations while Branch happened to be there and while the recorder was running, as opposed to simply reflecting about the ongoing presidency with the writer, right? It's a documenting of the presidency in action. It's like a body camera for a police officer. It's like a surgical recording of a doctor, right? We transcribe everything in courts, but we're recorded on the record all the time. But that's us performing the act of practicing law. It's not us musing on the act of practicing law. So Judicial Watch is saying, well, I mean, if it's a presidential record, it's sort of like sending an email, isn't it? I mean, if he's standing there, conducting the presidency, don't we want to know what that is? The gravamen of the complaint then says is that the tape should have been included in the presidential records, transferred over to the archivist at the United States at the end of the Clinton presidency. But Clinton took them home. He retained them in his personal possession when he left his office, and the defendant is unable to produce them now. That means the National Archives. So Judicial Watch said, well, we want to see those. I mean, those are the presidential records, and we file a FOIA request, a Freedom of Information Act request, and you're not giving them to us. So what gives? Parties agree that the audio tapes are not in the government's possession, right? That might be a distinguishing factor here. You can't, well, that's not true because they could have raided Clinton's house, I guess. Former president is not a named party in this action, so maybe they should have sued Bill, and then they would have dismissed that without standing. So they go and they give us some law. We're going to fast forward through most of this, but let me just kind of try to hit some of the highlights here. It says, look, in the wake of the controversy surrounding the disposition of Nixon's presidential records, the Presidential Records Act of 1978 came into existence, governing the preservation and the disclosure of presidential records. Here's what it says. Documentary materials or any reasonably segregable portion thereof that come or in and out of the presidency or have anything basically to do with the presidency are within the act. The United States shall reserve and retain complete ownership and control of presidential records, including taking all such steps necessary to assure that deliberations, decisions, policies, and the performance of constitutional statutory authorities are maintained as presidential records. But watch. This is where the distinction comes in, right? This is Trump's defense. The PRA, the Presidential Records Act, says there's a difference between presidential records and personal records. Yes, we know they both start with a P. But personal records includes all documentary materials, any reasonably segregable portion thereof that is of purely private or non-public character, which do not relate to having an effect of carrying out the duties of the presidency. So we've got this distinction. We've got personal records and presidential. PRA, the Presidential Records Act, which covers both of them, says this provides diaries, journals, personal notes, anything that's sort of the functional equivalent, those are personal records. And that all materials that have come in should try to go and be presidential records as best we can. But the categorization of these records during the presidency controls what happens next. At the conclusion of the president's term, the archivist is directed to go through this analysis and make records available to the public. They've gone through some other cases, a 2009 case involving somebody named Cheney. And they came to certain conclusions. PRA provides the archivist with authority to invoke enforcement mechanisms. We had some procedural background that took place here. Judicial Watch filed the Freedom of Information Act request in 2009. They wanted 79 tapes sent over. There was a bunch of appeals that took place, and NARA ultimately filed a motion to dismiss. Letters got sent back and forth. This is sort of a big, long opinion, so we're going to fast forward through the law. And finally, we get some analysis here. Now, I want to actually skip all the way down to the conclusion, more or less. We have a series of decisions that came out, and the judge is going to summarize them for us. Cases remanded back down, and then the judge throws them out. The Armstrong decision is not relevant in this case. And as we fast forward through the rest of this opinion, they say the court can't do anything for Judicial Watch, right? It's not redressable, so there's nothing we could order that's going to get you what you want. We don't have the ability to do that. But it does tell us the court also cannot compel the archivist to reclassify or retrieve the audio tapes because the PRA does not mandate it. They say plaintiff's entire claim is predicated on the notion that the archivist of the U.S. has a statutory duty and to assume custody and control of all presidential records. But there are a number of flaws with this argument. To begin, the plain language does not say what the plaintiff claim it does, that the archivist must assume control. They say the archivist shall assume responsibility for the control and custody of the documents, right? So it's sort of like they're just mincing words. Responsibility for custody and control, not must assume actual custody or control. So, responsibility for it might mean that they just have to know where it is versus having physical custody or control. So it's distinguishing that. We're going to fast forward to the next sort of section. And it says the sole enforcement mechanism available to the archivist is committed to its discretion. So the archivist can decide to enforce it or not. In this case, they're not enforcing it. They don't, they sort of don't want to. So the court is siding with them. In the Trump case, they want to enforce it. But there's a section here about presidential records and personal records and who ultimately has the authority on the ruling. And here's what they say. Because the court is unable to provide the remedy plaintiffs seek, the court is unable to redress the plaintiff's claim. Therefore, the court is going to grant the defendant's motion to dismiss for lack of standing. A separate order will issue. And that came out from Amy Berman. And this is dismissing Judicial Watch's claim because saying they don't have a right to any of these records, much the same way that they're now saying Trump has an obligation to comply with, or the National Archives has the obligation to go obtain custody of those records, right? It's the must-have physical control versus the must-have responsibility for the physical control. They knew where where all of these boxes were. There were several emails from them that said that they were actually communicating with Trump's lawyers about this, that this went back and forth. They asked Trump to put more locks on his on the closet to make sure it was secure, right? They had responsibility over the documents, even though they didn't have physical possession over the documents. Judicial Watch said you have to have physical possession over the documents. Go get the 87 tapes from Clinton. Court said, no, you don't. They just shall have responsibility for it. And then dismissed the claim brought by Judicial Watch. And this came over from Judge Amy Berman, and her name is, she went to Harvard, and that means that it must be a good opinion. Here, you can see it. It says, Judge Jackson received her JD from Harvard Law School and Harvard College for the undergrad. So I guess that means that that opinion is sort of without any potential argument. Harvard, very, very smart. Judicial Watch versus NARA. And it seems like that, the National Archives doesn't actually have to have physical control over those documents. So we'll continue to follow Judicial Watch and NARA and anything else related to the development, whether this case is used or not. Judicial Watch, if you remember, is highly involved in this current saga. They want the records unsealed, just like they wanted those records unsealed. But in this case, they just dismissed the entire thing, saying that the president has a lot of authority to declare things personal records. And even if he does declare them personal records, the National Archives has no obligation. Even if they are presidential records, the National Archives has no real authority to, or no real obligation to maintain control of them, which is a very different narrative than what we have heard in the Trump saga. And so we'll continue to follow it. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. And we have one more segment, my friends, before we wrap it up for the day and jump into your questions and your comments over from our friends at watchingthewatchers.locals.com and over from our YouTube community. And let's see here what is coming up next. Donald Trump and the epic troll from last night. This one happened so fast last night that I couldn't even make sense of it, but it's well worth unpacking because it's just too good. Donald Trump trolls the Democrats in the New York primaries. And this one caught a lot of people by surprise because, like many people, I'm not from New York and I'm not really invested in the primaries there. But if you know what's going on, you're going to see how hysterical this really was. And it's not just funny because of what Donald Trump posted, which was funny, but it's hilarious because of what the response was from all the Democrats. Essentially what happened here, to summarize, Donald Trump came out and endorsed all of these people in different ways. We've got Dan Goldman, yuh-line Niao, and Mondaire Jones. There's a district in New York. It's called New York 10. And all these people are running. And Dan Goldman is up at 22%, right? So this is pretty close. Primaries are coming up here in a week or two. And yuh-line is also pretty close, 17%. And we also have Mondaire Jones. He's at 13%. And so what Donald Trump did is he came out and he kind of made an endorsement. So before we see what his endorsements are, we got to learn a little bit more about these people. First of all, Dan Goldman, if you're not familiar with him, here is his website. He says, I'm running for Congress for New York's 12th district, and I'm exclusively endorsed by the New York Times. And down here, he says, I'm the former Trump impeachment prosecutor, lead counsel, and a federal prosecutor. He says, I'm Dan Goldman. I'm running for Congress in New York's 10th district to protect democracy and defend the fundamental right of America. And look, right on his campaign website, it says, this is a 5-alarm fire that too many Democrats in Washington are treating as a tiny distant flame. Donald Trump and the Republican Party he controls are not only trying to take away our rights, but they're tearing down the foundations of democracy itself. Oh. And here, right, this is the district that he's in, and so you can see what that covers. Now, he's in a pretty tight race against some other individuals. Somebody named yuh-line, she's at 17%, and then Mondaire Jones. And right, it's pretty close. I mean, really pretty close for a primary. And Donald Trump endorsed. We're going to see who he endorsed. But also, there's another race. This one's taking place out of New York 12. And that one involves Jerry Nadler, the gentleman from Congress who's been waddling around there for 135 years with a diaper on. And he just waddles all over the place, stinking up the whole joint. And so he is also in sort of a contentious race. New polls came out. He's actually doing better. But he's running against Representative Maloney, who is this woman, right? She is an actual female. And we're going to see why that's relevant in a minute. But then lastly, we've got this guy, Suraj Patel. Now, yesterday when we read through Trump's tweets, you're probably like, what the heck is so funny? What is he talking about? This doesn't make any sense at all. And it didn't, because it was a very confusing saga. But now I want to revisit the tweets because they are just incredible. Now that we know who everybody is, Trump posts this out of the blue. And it's not just the tweets, but they all react to these. Okay, every single one of those candidates responds. Trump posts this. He says, lawyer Dan Goldman, who was his impeachment lead counsel, is running for Congress, New York 10. And it is my great honor to strongly endorse him. I do this not because of the fact that he headed up the impeachment committee and lost, but because he was honorable, fair, and highly intelligent. While it was my honor to beat him and to beat him badly, Dan Goldman has a wonderful future ahead. He says he will be very compassionate and compromising to those within the Republican Party, and he's going to do everything possible to make sure they have a fair chance at winning against the radical left Democrats, who he knows are destroying our country. I would like to thank Dan for fighting so hard for America and for working so tirelessly to stop Trump. He was not very easy to beat, but winning against him made me realize just how very talented I am. And that was from Donald Trump. Now, immediately after that was posted, okay, what happened? Well, we have some responses from Dan Goldman's political opponents all over Twitter. yuh-line, she hops on Twitter and she says this. She says, Donald Trump just endorsed my multimillionaire opponent. In case you needed a reminder of what the stakes are. Hashtag New York 10. Choose your fighter. And she's referencing this. Donald Trump's post says lawyer Dan Goldman is running for Congress. It's my great honor to strongly endorse him. Can you believe this? Trump supporting Dan Goldman. Trump is by the way, tell your friends also, in New York that Donald Trump is fully endorsing Dan Goldman. It's weird. I didn't expect it. But yuh-line is now recognizing that, it's pretty disgusting that it feels to me like Dan Goldman is a Donald Trump fan or something, like he likes him, maybe. So then also Mondaire Jones is also jumping on Dan Goldman. He says, my opponent, Dan Goldman, is endorsed by Donald Trump. You're going to vote for Dan? Trump says he's backing Goldman because he wants progressives to lose and because Goldman failed to hold him accountable for the first time. New York should not send this man to Congress. which is just great. So Mondaire Jones is just they know what they're doing too. Like they know Trump is doing this, right? And they're just, I bet, should I post this? I mean, I'm posting it. You want to post it? Yeah, let's post it. I think he really did endorse Dan Goldman. So he says, yeah, my opponent totally endorsed by Trump. I can't believe this. I'm shocked. I'm shocked too. Honestly, I can't believe it. And so he does it again. Okay, so right after he drops that one, so that's Trump round number one. And then number two is his sort of next set of tweets. And remember that we've got, now he goes over to New York 12. We've got Rep. Nadler. We've got Maloney here. And then we've got Suraj Patel. And so then Trump comes out here on his second sort of set of tweets. And he says, hey, remember Carolyn Maloney? He says, a vote for Carolyn Maloney in New York 12 is a vote for the future. She is a kind and wonderful person who has always said terrific things about me and will support me no matter what I do, just as I supported her very early on. She begged me for a check with no quid pro quo, and I gave it to her. In fact, I gave her many. On the other hand, Jerry Nadler is likewise a hard-driving man of the people whose energy and attention to detail is unlike anyone else in Congress. He is high energy, sharp, quick-witted, and bright. You can't go wrong with either. But Carolyn Maloney is the better man. She will lead our country into a very green and prosperous future. Carolyn has my complete and total endorsement. She will never let our conservative movement down. Carolyn Maloney is the better man. And so what happens, of course, is, in New York 12, Suraj Patel, he comes right out and he hits the ground running. He says, I'm proud that Donald Trump has nothing positive to say about me because he knows how much more effective a new generation of diverse, energetic Democrats will be in stopping his agenda. And then these other two, right? Nobody knows where Jerry Nadler is. He's waddling around Congress, probably on some committee somewhere, but no statement from him, but everybody else has to disavow. So Representative Maloney, who is not a man as far as I know, maybe her identity had changed recently, I'm not sure, but she says, oh, this is laughable. And I reject any endorsement from Donald Trump. Okay, I just reject it. You can't reject an endorsement. He endorses you. Reject it all you want. It's yours. Sorry. That's how it works. I endorse you too, Carolyn Maloney. I think you are the better man of the two. But here it says, this is laughable. I reject any endorsement. And she says, Trump doesn't respect women. Also, I reject your endorsement. Trump doesn't respect women. He instigated the attacks on January 6th and claimed 2020 was a big lie. So she just goes through her talking points. Your endorsement. You've been endorsed. Deal with it, Carolyn. Can't reject anything. Not today, my friend. And so Donald Trump just epically trolls the heck out of the Democrats. And again, the post was funny because he called Carolyn Maloney a man, and she's the better man, especially against Jerry Nadler. Or maybe Nadler was, I can't remember. But the point is, they all responded to it. They all picked it up and they ran with it. And they're all just jousting each other with Donald Trump's own endorsements. So it really just doesn't get any better than that, my friends. And so Donald Trump trolls the Democrats on True Social. I'm available over there if you want to follow anything I do over there at Robert Govea. Give me a follow over on True Social. I think there's going to be some more epic trolls from the former president, and I am looking forward to them. And we will, of course, continue to cover them as well. And I hope you join us on that journey. Do not forget to hit that subscribe button so that we don't miss each other the next time there's a video release. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one. And all right, my friends, that's it for the segments. We covered a lot of ground. We had Trump trolls, the Dem primary. We've got the Clinton sock drawer exonerates Trump story. And then we've got lastly Trump unsealing, or the Trump judge seemingly hinting at unsealing the affidavit, although with some serious redactions. We'll continue to see there. But now I want to hear from you, my friends. Let's see what you have to say about this over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com and from our friends on YouTube. We had a super chat come in from John McGarvey in the house. He says, can we have a moment of silence for Brian Stelter? pour one out for Brian Stelter. I was going to pour one out, but I don't really care that much. You know, Brian Stelter, sort of amazing that he's lasted that long. Now, I think he's probably going to be like given a promotion somewhere, right? Go over to MSNBC, or he might be press secretary or something. You know, they might give him a promotion. They might make him Secretary of State, you know. Oh, I can't believe you got canned from CNN. How evil what they did to you. And they bring him over somewhere else. So, you know, maybe he can start a YouTube channel. You know, it's not as easy as it looks. He can a little easier when you have a whole team of people feeding you rote talking points that you just read off a teleprompter, right? Maybe he can get out there and try some actual journalism and some actual content creation rather than just reading garbage day after day. Let's see what we've got from our friends over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And I think this is the first one in the house. Who's this one here? Oh, AAA Patriot says, I fear that Washington, D.C. has an adult diaper shortage tonight. Yeah, could be. There could be some serious diaper shortages there. Hopefully not. I mean, because that's, you know, that would be disgusting. Here is from former LEO. He says, it appears that the DOJ search warrant affidavit was just mailed it in. Yeah, it was a WhatsApp. Yeah, they did it on WhatsApp. Perhaps the most important action ever taken by the DOJ was against a former president is an insult to every American by not even appearing in person. This country is turning into something I barely recognize. Those jerks in the Democratic Department of Justice just want to tear down and destroy America. I can actually remember back when the rule of law meant something, like a 2:30 a.m. calling on an on-duty sex crimes district, when a district attorney helped us prepare a warrant affidavit for two serial child somethings. She gave us her home address and we stopped to pick up coffee on the way to her home. Other units staked out the apartment while after about an hour of assembling the affidavit, we woke up on the on-call judge drove to his home where he reviewed the affidavit and signed off. The most satisfying part was them taking a plea deal to 6 counts, and they both received a sentence that would allow them to spend a minimum of 50 years before a possible parole. I only arrested the people that needed arresting, and I never had a case as the arresting officer dismissed for impropriety on my part. If you go to the effort to make a report and an arrest, make it a good one. It boggles the mind that the DOJ would mail it in and not be present in person to the judge. It's not incompetence, it's arrogance. Yeah, I think that you're dead on about a lot of that, former LEO. Very good comment. You know, there's a human element to law, and I think that's a lot of what you just described. And you know, a lot there is that still exists to some degree. I mean, I haven't practiced, sort of boots on the ground personally in a while. I've got sort of a team of amazing attorneys who are more qualified than I am to do that, and they are, But when I remember when I was practicing more, in courts, I sort of really appreciated those moments that you described. You can sit down with the judge, sit down with the prosecutor, and unfortunately that doesn't happen all that much in some of the bigger courts or the bigger districts. It actually is a bummer. The smaller towns is where you get more of that personal, I think, conversation, and that's not a good thing. Good to see you, former. Jason says, Rob, I'm pretty sure a sound argument to make that would withstand SCOTUS is that Congress cannot restrict or further enumerate the 4 qualifications for the office of the presidency. I agree with that. They cannot do this because the Constitution was not silent and enumerated the qualifications for running for office. Anything outside the enumerated qualifications would therefore be unconstitutional in their face and not enforced. The only exception would be the abuse of the 14th Amendment and significant overreach, which would create a constitutional crisis. Yeah. Jason on blast, you're right about that, right? I'm definitely not one of those people who thinks if Trump is like charged, he can't run. I think that he could run, even if he was sitting in a prison cell, even if he's a convicted felon. I think that's pretty clear. But I think that part of the reason that why they might want to indict him would be to smear him so that he doesn't have the public wherewithal, the public support to run. But the 14th Amendment, right now you could say that is constitutional. And so if the House passed a resolution under the insurrection clause, or Cheney sued him under the insurrection clause, right? If she runs as a primary candidate, getting standing for a lawsuit to sue him under the insurrection clause, could they extrapolate something out of there, right? I think they could. And based on what we've seen here, I think that they might try that, to be honest with you. So great comment. Thank you, Jason. Tricky says, I missed a few shows, so I apologize for repeating, but did you ever find anything out about a second warrant? No, I haven't seen that. And nothing's been executed. Anything about a second warrant would still be sealed at this point. Former LEO says, Are you going to get the transcripts? Probably not for the 1 hour thing. I think we got the order and there's nothing really else to unpack there. Good thriving Thursday, Rob and Watchers says America is filled with many intelligent people. This political challenge is bringing out so many hardworking, wise people, and you, Rob, are one of them. I think that about you too, my friend. TOS forever. Thank you for being here. Also says, if Thunder7 says, if Reinhart thinks we're going to accept his pretense at transparency when all he's going to do is redact the incriminating wording, which proves there was no probable cause, and the informant is a liar and a hack, then he's going to be in for a big surprise. The swamp has been cornered, and he says we're not going to accept this illegal warrant from Thunder7. Peacefully, non-acceptance. Miss Lucky and Sergeant Bob say, state, county, and local police should not be defunded. We know what the result has been. If the big red wave happens, I would like to see the FBI funds cut so they cannot pursue their political agenda. Also, cut the IRS to where they cannot hire 8,000 plus agents to audit every American. Sergeant Bob, I think that's a typo. It's not 8,000, it's 87,000. Then cut Capitol Police so they cannot set up offices in other places. Let us cut the ATF, who at the behest of the Dems is trying to curtail our Second Amendment rights. In other words, cut funding to the federal agencies pursuing political agendas to a great cost to free Americans. I agree with that. What? Yes, cut the money. Cut it. TOS says first warrant Special Agent Ray Epps in a posthumous care of old Epstein. Sergeant Bob writes, all this sealing nonsense seems to be similar to how the KGB operates secret police. C. Rose says, I've been watching your show since the Chauvin trial, and I've got to say I just love your show. Just like how I love Pepsi more than Coca-Cola. Did you see CNN has fired Brian Stelter? It's been a good week. Yeah, it's been a good week. It's been an exciting week for sure. Not a good week for Brian Stelter. Oh, gosh, this Coke comment. It's just the worst. Can you believe this? We should set up a poll one day. I would set up a poll, but you'd probably be embarrassed, C. Rose, about how badly you're mistaken. Here we have Thunder7 says Patrick Byrne, total patriot, spent $50 million, of his own money. That's a lot to make a documentary about election fraud. True the Vote, Lindell, others. Does it all to save America. Very intelligent man. Unknown to most people until he threw his hat in the ring behind Trump. I didn't know about the guy. Yeah, I was reading about him today. Miss Lucky says, I wonder if Teflon Bill recorded his thoughts about Monica Lewinsky and her duties as an intern. Sergeant Bob. Heather and 3 girlies is here, says, I came in late school shopping for all of the girlies and the youngest of the girlies. School shopping, almost done. School starts next Wednesday. I can't wait. Mama girlies, probably very excited. The younger girlies, hopefully you're excited. School's very good. It's important to learn knowledge. It's really valuable. Shout out to the 3 girlies, the youngest who starts school, says, so how is Trump endorsing all these Democrats any different than all the Democrats funding Trump campaigns? They don't like it when it happens to them. No, they don't. They wanted Dems to go vote for Cheney. Sergeant Bob says, way too funny. President Trump is playing with the useless Dems. Donald worked around New York Dems for years as a world-class developer, and he knows his stuff. He's probably friends with all of them. I think he's probably true. He probably did actually give money to Carolyn Maloney. Thunder7 says, after you're watching your show, the personal pronouns today are troll, ultra troll. Yeah, it's a good one too. Trump, he can adopt those today. Oh, something came to the door. Hang on a minute. I'll share this with you. I got to get it before somebody robs me. Okay. All right. So I have been waiting for this puppy. No, it's not that interesting. Somebody in the chat, Jenny B says, is it a Glock? No, it's not a Glock. It's, it's cool, but it's different. Let's just say it's different. So here it came. Let's grab this knife. This is now an unboxing channel. This is not legal related. This is tech geek related. But I've been waiting for this because it's going to be able to. It's going to help. It's going to help with some production quality over here, and in particular, I'd say for locals and for interviews. Here's what we got. Oh yeah, baby! This is the new Atom Mini. Look at this. Live stream and record, baby. Ooh! Yeah, this is going to be a game changer for my production quality here. Now, I want to show you this. I've been watching videos about, look at all these buttons on here. I've been watching videos about this for probably about 10, 15 hours of videos on how to use this thing. And yeah, it's going to be super cool. I'm sure nobody cares about the tech, but it's for live streaming. It's going to make us do some more cool stuff here. And I'm super excited that it got here because that's going to allow me to do some cool stuff. So thank you to everybody, right? When you support the show with your super chats and your memberships and stuff, that type of stuff is pretty expensive and it takes sort of a lot of finagling to figure it all out. And so I want to share, thank you for sort of being able to support some of those purchases. A lot of what you provide here, right? All of it basically goes back into, the show. And so I'm grateful for it. Let's see here. Paul Mino says, Rob, did you have that shirt on a wire hanger? It's a little wrinkly, isn't it, Paul? I don't know what happened with this one. It is a little wrinkly. I apologize. Do you think it's chartreuse though? It kind of looks chartreusey. And Paul, by the way, I'm going to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tomorrow night at 7:00. So I the funniest story, man. I was thinking about it last night. And I was checking around for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu locations in Arizona. And there was one that I thought was right down the street because I moved pretty far away from where I was and at my prior location before COVID hit. And I couldn't remember the name of this gym. And I tried to find it and I was Googling around on YouTube and I couldn't find it. Finally, I found a phone number that I thought was associated with this gym that I drove by. And I just randomly texted. I said, hey, are you still open? Is this like a business? It's one of those businesses that's like kind of there, but not, And he responded. He said, yeah, well, actually, no, we're not open to the public, but we've got a group of guys that were rolling around. What's your experience? And I sent him my experience. And he said, we're going to be down the street tomorrow at 7:00. You want to come? And I said, I'll be there. What? It's crazy. It's like ridiculous. It just worked out perfectly. So thank you, Paul, for inspiring me to sort of reach out and look into that. It all worked out beautifully. And I've got a new Atom Mini Pro switcher, which is going to level up our production here. Let's go back to the questions and the comments from you, which really matter. Says here, Rob, this is from The Veil, says, I love the comment last night about Ultra Mega. Searches and seizures. Can we the people do a search and seizure of the judge and Garland with a general search and seizure order? If we can identify one object in their homes, give wide-angle proximity. Can we get the judge's robe, Garland's badge, bedroom, office, garage, kitchen sink? No. I mean, after all, since this is the norm in searches and seizures now these days, why not? Can we just have fun and see what develops? Just, no. I mean, I like the idea, just drafting up a general warrant or something like that, but no, you're going to need an official law enforcement agent to do any of that. Said here, Vientica says, congratulations. We had about a peak of 13,000 watching today. Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Look, guys, I've said this, right? People are fired up about this, right? We don't get those size audiences here. This is a little tiny channel here. We're just a humble crew of people just chit-chatting in a corner over here. 10,000 people, that's a lot. 13,000, that's a lot. And I'm grateful for it, but it's I think, a sign of the outrage. It's a sign of the interest in making sure that this resolves appropriately. And, it doesn't look like it's like we're heading towards an off ramp here. All right. I did a refresh. Oh, hey, Facts Matter says that Viva is attending the hearing. Would be fun to have him on for his take. I didn't know that. Okay. Yeah. Maybe I'll have to reach out to him. Kelly Salnow says, where is the dang switcher? It's here. It was supposed to come on Monday. Then it was going to come on Saturday. Then it was going to come on Tuesday, yesterday. Then it arrived on, what's today? Thursday. I don't know. Three Girly says, aren't judges supposed to check the executive branch, to be the check on the executive branch when they want to issue such broad warrants? Apparently, these judges aren't taking their job seriously when they just rubber stamp whatever comes across their desk. Tell me about it, Three Girlies. These judges in Arizona, all over 30 minutes, boom, 30 minutes. Warrants are like nothing. You can get one like you're buying lottery tickets. Miss Lucky says, good one, former LEO. Yeah, it was a good one. Jeremy says, Rob, when are you doing something unprecedented and the first of its kind in history? When you are doing something unprecedented and the first of its kind in history, you don't just phone it in. I have to do something unprecedented and historical, I guess. I got to figure out what that is. Vientica says, why not? I did the same thing with sex. Just phoning it in. Yesterday, I think there was a masturbation joke from Vienticus, but today it's, well. Zach Nichols says, I can't wait. The highly anticipated 2024 Fake News Awards coming in from Zach Nichols. Good to see you, Zach. And we had Kelly, former LEO, says, Sergeant Bob probably has 100 different stories like that when dedicated LEOs spent the effort to respect and uphold the law. Yeah, he has a book. Sergeant Bob has a whole book about it. And I'd encourage you to go check that out. Jeremy says, everything about the DOJ going after a former president really boggles the mind. Their flawed logic and claims that are all over the map. This feels like they are so desperate. They are just flailing about, making no sense. Their blind hatred is clouding their judgment. The silver lining is the DOJ and the FBI raiding Trump's house is helping him more than hurting him. I agree completely, JC. It's like if they had just left him alone, you play the silent treatment, you just ignore him, just ignore the kid. He'll go away. But now it's like, oh my gosh. And actually Trump on True Social, he posted here, let's pull this up. Let's see what El Donaldo Trumpo has said recently. He was posting some polls on Truth about reactions to the Mar-a-Lago raid. And let's see. Yeah, here it is. In fact, here's Donald. Posted this on Truth, I think earlier, 22 hours ago. He says, behind the FBI raid, this comes from the Trafalgar group, and they say, who do you believe is behind the FBI raid on President Trump's private home? Response number one, not sure, 8.7%. Number two, the impartial justice system, 14.6%. And Trump's political enemies, 76%. It's a lot. That's a lot of people who think Trump's political enemies are behind the FBI raid on his home. He also posted this one. Does the FBI raid on President Trump increase your motivation to vote in the 2022 election? Not sure, 6%. No, 10%. Yes, 83%. So, Jeremy, I think you're dead right about this, my friend. Yes, it's 83%. And how do you think those people are voting? What direction do you think they're going? Do you think the Democrats have that same momentum for Joe Biden or anybody else? I doubt it. Right. So there's Trump, political enemies. He's talking about some other stuff. He said, yeah, fake news continues to push crazy Liz Cheney. And so, he's getting a bunch of followers pretty rapidly. So let me share this, too. So Donald Trump, 3.9 million followers officially on Truth. That's going up pretty quickly. So I think I saw it at like 3.7 earlier in the week. So it's, or a couple 100,000 a day or so. So, the platform is going to be gobbling up people. It's a far cry from his 90 million or 100 million or whatever it was on Twitter. But if half those people were bots, right, he's building slow. He's got 2 years to continue to build this thing. And he is doing it rapidly. So pretty fun stuff over there. Let's see what else we've got. The Veil says, hey, Rob, there's a movement called hold on a minute. Let me vet this before I read out this. I don't know what that means. It's kind of a scary prognostication here. Or let's see here. Tyranny Response Alert Team. So there's this website called End the FBI. Tell your members of Congress to dismantle the FBI. And you can support you can put your information on the website and head on over there. It looks like it's Convention of the States Action and the FBI, Tyranny Response Alert Team. And so that was shared over by See the Veil. Thanks for sharing that, See the Veil. What are your thoughts on this? On my end, I'm not against it, but there needs to be a lot of people to sign this petition for it to work. Yeah, I think that probably the better approach would be to put pressure. Look, I mean, in all practicality, the FBI is probably not going anywhere. But if you really wanted to, to make moves on it, you'd have to do it through Congress, and making enough noise so your Congress people respond is probably the most appropriate way to get any action on it. Bossy B says, thanks for reading the Trump New York tweets about the candidates. I really needed a laugh. It was funny yesterday because of the Carolyn Maloney Nadler. He said, Maloney is the better man, or whatever that was. I was dying laughing yesterday, but I didn't know the details, that these were close races and that these were all sort of, and what was even funnier is they all responded. Like, they all actually, picked up on it. Sergeant Bob says, exciting tech stuff, Rob. We love the show. Thanks for what you do. Thank you for that. So, yeah, I know it's kind of geeked out stuff, but it's fun. So I know what I'm doing this weekend, is I guess my point. Thunder7 says, when you stepped away, there was a YouTube chat about taking over the show. There was an insurrection? When I left, my show was almost insurrected. Was Cheney in here? Here, Thunder7 says, better call the feds. I don't. I'll call Sergeant Bob and former LEO instead. Don Tess says, the ATEM, I've been waiting for this for a while. Seriously, I want to see what you think about it, if it's worth it for a while. Maybe just you and I care. I care, like, I'm so excited about it. And this one is the extreme, okay? So I have actually dabbled with the ATEM before. I have an ATEM right now hooked up. But this ATEM is like, the one that I have, it's like amateur hour. They came out with this after the fact, and my ATEM has these 4 buttons right here. Only 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. As you can see, this has 8 plus. It's got 2 USB-Cs out. It's got 2 HDMI outs. It's got I can do multiple pictures in pictures. I can do 4x4 frames on it. I can do 8 cameras. I have 2 cameras set out. I have a sunset camera that I've been playing around with. I'm not sure if I'm going to do anything with it, but it looks out at the sunset. I can do interviews here with multiple cameras. It's like crazy. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm giddy as can be. All right, here, Words Mean Thing says, not chartreuse. This is chartreuse. This is pretty close. I mean, look, let's blow this up here. Let's blow that up. No, what is that? Yeah, I mean, that's pretty close. That's pretty close, I don't know that I can find a color quite that vibrant, but I don't think that's not bad. So, that's Words Mean Things. Thank you, Words Mean. Kevlar says not close. All right, well, it's green. Yeah, I don't know. Former LEO says, back in the day, Trump only dated beautiful... What? Okay, so that's a comment from former LEO. Thank you, former LEO, for that comment. I'm not sure. I don't know anything about that. STFUFFS came in with the super chat. Says, since Mr. Overstock is pro se, can we copy pasta his filing on Moss? Yeah, probably. I'd ask his permission, He actually has a locals community. I signed up for it. He's right next door on locals, so go check him out. He says, can we copy pasta it? The proles can pro se if they rich can, right? You can, yeah, you can pro se all you want. Yeah, and there's, there's multiple other, Michael S. Barth is pro saying in there as well. And yeah, pro se yourself all you want. The judge will probably just, lump you into, a omnibus response team or deny your motions, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Pretty interesting. It's fun to read anyways, right? Different people chiming in, may not go anywhere. Very likely won't, but it's still fun to read. Paul Mino, do you have that shirt on a wire hanger? I don't know what I did with it. Apparently I did. And yeah. Scott Lado became a member. Shout out to Scott. And we have our morning walk and talks that take place over on Locals. And they are a ton of fun. And we had oh my goodness, we had some super chats come in over on Locals, on the Locals chat. Here, this one came in from Vientikis, which is very generous, V. You're contributing and a mod. It's too much. He says, take my money. And that's from what is that from? Oh, that's from Futurama. I was going to beat myself if I couldn't figure that one out. AA Patriot says, wouldn't it be great if news about Biden, Clinton, Obama kept dripping out till the year end, then new Congress removes the current admin and reinstates DJT 121-2023, serve 2 remaining years, and then reelected for 4 more in 2024? Yeah, you get a full 6. You get a full what? 10 years out of him. That's funny. And Rabid Con's over there. Zach Nichols, JC the Music Man, John McGarvey, Jason on Blast. Everybody's over there chatting away, and you can see what that looks like when you join our community. Shout out to Phantasmagloria and others. But I think that is about it. We had STFU with a couple more. Said, says Trump is the king of trolls, which is true. He's really good at it, and he's really funny. STFU says Trump isn't the hero we deserve. He's who we need, just like Bruce Wayne. Paul Mino, wire hanger comment. K Bean says, Rob, BJJ is the best, Gracie. Yeah, so I don't know much about where I'm going tomorrow. This was text messages, honestly. It was the most random thing that ever happened, and like they're right next door. Like there's a facility there. I'll see you there. So it's going to be very cool, but it is good, and I did see, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. FFS says, since Overstock is pro se, can we copy pasta that? Yeah, we got all of that one. Viva's here. Viva is in the house. Viva is here. He says, I can only super chat from my laptop. Godspeed, Rob. Viva, I heard that you were actually over there, that you were actually at the trial. So I would love to connect with you if you're doing that. And, we talked, I think yesterday, we did the segment on the smear job against Viva. And if you missed that one, the segment is back up on our channel. But the USA Today was impeaching the good character of our very astute and ethical friend, Viva. And it was offensive, man. And honestly, this has been something that I sort of feels like is escalating a little bit. And I'd be curious what Viva had to say about it. Maybe we'll talk to him about it. But, you look around, Viva got smeared, and it was actually, I think, intentional. I mean, he actually put it in there, and Viva actually has a whole video on his channel where he actually pulled up the document, the article. I was not able to pull up the article because they had paywalled it at that time, and I was not going to pay to see it. But I'd refer you over to Viva's channel because he goes through it, and they're smearing his name, and they did it intentionally. And it's really reprehensible. Today, actually last night, they banned Steven Crowder, or they suspended him. Libs of TikTok has had, her issues. El Americano YouTube channel got banned. Like, the list is going on and on. And as the temperature continues to rise a bit, I'm very sure that it's going to continue to escalate. And so support your content creators. Make sure you go follow Viva on YouTube. He's at Viva Fry on YouTube. He's right next door on Locals. VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com. They're right next door to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And, they're awesome guys. So really, really, it's a pleasure to have to sort of, be in company with them and the work that they're doing. So shout out to Viva. And we're going back over to Locals. Skip Money's in the house. He says, I think there's probably a greater likelihood the House flips than the Senate. Senate races are just different, GOP leader said. Candidate quality has a lot to do with the outcome. A dig at Trump endorsements. Yeah, the Senate, the Senate may not be all that likely to flip. There are a couple races. The one in Pennsylvania, for example, is not looking good. Oz, right? The Oz against Fetterman, who is, recovering from a stroke, can't even campaign, losing pretty significantly. I get a little nervous about Arizona, Blake Masters versus Mark Kelly. I'd love to see that one flip. Not sure that's going to happen. We'll see, right? Maybe there's some more work to do. And that was from Skip Money. And I think that is it from our friends over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Let me do a quick run through on all the various screens before we wrap it up for the day. And I think that is it, my friends. Yeah. And so shout outs to our friends over on YouTube. John Kurtz says, Crowder booted for talking with Carrie Lake. Yeah, and it's like, how is that not helping Carrie Lake's opponent if you're censoring her off of these platforms? It's like they're almost campaigning for Katie Hobbs. It's ridiculous. Just Cause is here. Barb Arian says, Pennsylvania, Wolf of the People's Republic. Jacob Castro says 37 points talking about Liz. Big pun, have a drink on me. Allison Cole says, I heart Viva. There was a great comment on the Viva channel that I posted. Somebody, I pinned it up there. Lean says, I'm not coming tomorrow. Lean is not coming tomorrow. Lean's not coming tomorrow. Lean, I'm going to miss you. Breaks my heart, but I understand. Stephen Farrington says, can't stand Mark. Yeah, there's a lot. Mark Kelly is a wild dude, a NASA scientist who doesn't understand weather, apparently. So we'll see how that race goes. But that, my friends, is it for us for the day. We're going to wrap it up right here. We talked a lot, covered a lot of ground today. Judge unsealing portions of the record. Going to debate about the actual affidavit. We'll see if that comes out. Clinton, the sock drawer lawsuit. We'll see if that case comes back up. Judicial Watch sued NARA, and it's looking like, it might be over the Presidential Records Act. And if the Presidential Records Act comes into play against Trump, maybe it becomes relevant. Trump trolled the absolute bejesus out of the Democrats, and it was hysterical. So, we'll see who wins that one, whether Nadler is able to pull through. But it was a fun show, my friends, and I'm grateful that you joined us. I want to give special thanks to all of our friends over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Vienticus Prime says, we've assigned Just Cause a new name. He's now Dave Face. That sounds good. I like it. Dave Face, yeah. Rob Face, V Face, Jenny Face, yeah. So come on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Don't forget to sign up for our YouTube membership if you'd rather join up there and support us there. You get the same walk and talks and things like that. It's that join button right next to that subscribe button. If you're not already subscribed, I really appreciate it if you subscribe. It means we can stay in touch. You'll get some of the other videos, or recommended the other videos, and it really is sort of important for helping the show grow and the algorithm helping to reach more people. So thank you for that. I am also a lawyer here in Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona. We help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases, and beyond that, in their lives. And we really appreciate your referrals. I know we have a lot of fun here on the show, and sometimes things can get kind of jokey and jovial, but we do a lot of serious work, and we have, a lot of serious people that we help on a daily basis. And a lot of that is fueled by your referrals to us. You sort of see what we do here, and you trust us to help people in their most difficult times of need. And I'm grateful for that. So really thank you for sending them people our way. Free case evaluations, 480-787-0394. If we can't help them, we'll refer them to somebody who can. Make sure they get a copy of my book or whatever resources they need. We'd love the opportunity to help. So thank you for that. Thank you to our mods who modded down the fort for us. Big shout outs to Vienticus, to K Bean, who is here. Lean, who's in the house, who may not be here tomorrow. We'll have to see. Shout out to Just Cause for modding down the fort for us. Playing Hooky and the retired crew. I saw Jumpin' Jeff on Local says they love heralding firsts. There's a lot of that goes on, right? A lot of the heralding of the firsts, historic, and first this and first that, and da. Shout out to our friends, John over at qsimple.com, Chris Romero, David B3 in the house, along with Dr. EMB, who are all Spotlight supporters. And they are very generous with their support of the show. But that, my friends, is it for us for the day. So we will leave it right there, and we'll be back tomorrow with more. I hope you have a tremendous evening. You sleep very well, and I look forward to seeing you right back here tomorrow. Have a great evening, my friends. Bye-bye.